Wire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your testimony today, for the outreach that you've been making so far this year. I'm going to ask you to respond to a couple of questions in a moment, Mr. Ambassador, one of which is the level of cooperation or coordination you have with other nations in regards to what you're trying to accomplish as it relates to China. And the second one is in regards to the concern I have that the longer this trade war with China lasts, the more market share we start losing in China. China pivots to other countries, and how difficult it's going to be to regain that market share, because back home in my district in Wisconsin, my family farmers are getting hammered, and manufacturers. We had record bankruptcies for family farms last year alone, with close to, well over 800. That trend is continuing. I'm not saying this trade war is the sole cause, but it certainly is piling on right now. So those are the two questions I'll ask you. But before I do that, I think it's safe to assume, and you've probably heard it from most members, that there's bipartisan consensus on the challenges that we face with China. You know, the IP theft, forced technology transfers, forced joint ventures, what you're trying to accomplish in these negotiations. And there's bipartisan agreement on where we need to go and how we need to resolve this. But there is a difference of opinion on the tactics being used. There was another approach through a multilateral effort. I still believe that our summarily rejecting the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement is going to go down as one of the great strategic mistakes we made in the 21st century. This president, this administration summarily rejected it without due consideration. 12 nations in the largest and fastest growing economic region in the world, the Pacific Rim area, came up with standards and rules that elevate up to where we are, that China would have been on the outside looking in, would have isolated them and put great pressure on them, whether it was prohibition on IP theft, on forced technology transfers, on joint ventures, strong labor and environmental chapters, fully enforceable, e-commerce and digital trade chapter, everything that we're trying to accomplish right now to elevate standards to where we are. A prohibition against localization rules, for instance, was contained in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Moving forward on that would have put, I think, incredible leverage on China, isolating them in the region, and now we're on the outside looking in, and China's being able to help establish those rules of trade. At some point, we hope to be able to find a way to get back in that agreement rather than disadvantaging us from that. But having said that, let me go back to the original questions I asked in regards to the level of cooperation and coordination with other nations right now in regards to China. There's strength in numbers, and I think ultimately China will respond to the collective will of the international community much better than the unilateral action that we're taking against them today. And then finally, the lost market access issue.
So, thank you, Congressman. I would say, first of all, I think getting out of TPP was the right decision. It was a bad agreement. It was poorly negotiated, and a car could have been manufactured 45% in Vietnam and 55% in China and sold in the United States duty-free. It didn't do much on currency, had a whole lot of problems, and in any event, to get to your geopolitical problem, had China joined it, they wouldn't have lived up to the rules, we would have had a problem. Number one. Number two, as you know well, we have FTAs with 6 of the 11 countries that are in it already, and of the other 5, 95% of the GDP is in Japan, where, with your support and help, we're negotiating. So now I've said my thing, but I said it like this period of time. In terms of cooperation, we are trying to do it on 2 tracks. We do want to cooperate with other countries. As I say, we have the trilateral thing. We're trying your approach. I would say, though, that your approach by itself was less likely to be successful, and indeed was tried by prior administrations unsuccessfully. So what we want to do is continue that approach, but also put in place the unilateral action that the President has taken. And I would note that that unilateral action is what has brought us to the point where we are now. We're hopefully on the verge of beginning to turn the corner. In terms of
The gentleman will finish.
well, in terms of trade with China, we hope that we can get these barriers down, and we can do this before we lose our supply chains and our customers.
Okay. Thank you. Let me recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Dr. Winstrup, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ambassador.